Today we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to be taking a look at a Protection Warrior run instead of a Brewmaster run. This is an 18 Priory. I definitely didn't play this run well, and my highest Priory up to this point was only a 15, so jumping right into an 18 had me a little nervous, so I'm going to talk about what was going through my head, talk about our routes, talk about some mistakes that we made, as well as our strategy to complete the run. Now, over on my Patreon page, you will be able to find this run with the commentary. So if you want to listen to that instead, you can always check it out over there. That's free for anyone. Just check out the link down below. Now in this composition, you're going to notice something a little different. We aren't playing with our standard comp. Since I'm on the Prot Warrior, we are bringing a Unholy DK, Rep Paladin, and Feral Druid. So still more of a physical or at least a melee composition, but we are playing more to the strength of the Prot Warrior as well as attack power modifiers compared to something which is like a pure Fizz comp where you're bringing like things like Brewmaster, Outlaw Rogue, Feral Druid, Warrior. Now, at the start of this run, we were talking a little bit about our routes. We end up skipping kind of a couple unique things, and we have a unique, I would say more unique strategy for this dungeon. With a lot of people playing Demon Hunter, you are able to pull more casters, especially when you pair that with a Boomkin. Playing a melee comp like this, we are a little bit more sturdier to that physical damage elements in the key, like lynxes and the sharpshooters. So we're going to actually be playing a lot of those compared to what you normally see. But with that out of the way, the last thing I kind of want to mention is my trinket setup. I am running Ringing Ritual Mud as well as a Scrap Field. Now, Scrap Field was something that I saw Pika War run in his 19, and I wanted to give it a shot. Now, I don't have a mythic version of the trinket. I don't know if it was worthwhile. The haste benefit of the trinket had about a 33% uptime, and it did proc the shield 19 times, but it only ended up doing like 2% of my healing, so I don't know really how valuable the trinket was. I might opt to run something a little different in the future. But with that out of the way, let's dive into the run. All right, so here we go, start of the run. So we're not going to be doing any kind of fancy invis pots. We're actually going to be running with these first 4 footmen for quite some time. I would generally not recommend doing this. We just kind of slotted the key and we're like, YOLO, like we'll figure it out. So what I'm doing is I'm getting a little bit of threat established. We're making sure the patrols are in the right spot, as well as the footman pathing isn't weird. If you kind of run right in, the footman could social pull that patrol, which would pretty much already be the end of the key. We're now going to grab Suleiman, but instead of running to the right-hand side where you see most groups go, we're going to go to the left-hand side, and there's a couple of reasons for this. The patrol stops pretty early on this side compared to the other side. Plus, it's a little bit easier to get into this corner. Plus, we're going to be doing a lot of chaining from this side, where our pulls are going to be a little bit smaller than what you might see with like a VDH comp. So the big thing we're looking out for are these first defends. Now, I'm going to be saving Shockwave for it. If we cleave everything down evenly, we'll be able to get most of them. There's going to be 8 total footmen in this pull, though. So I was able to stop the first 6. A knockup from our shotgun stopped the next couple. And then, unfortunately, an overlap with a few pot shots, as well as Suleiman's Thunderclap, killed our Druid, and he's going to release and run back. This is problematic because it makes the pull last a little bit longer. I should have rallied there, honestly. Using bigger defensives is pretty important. So I just need to pay better attention to that. And then once most of those footmen go down, I'm going to be using the shield slam from Suleiman to knock myself up over the ledge so I can pull the next footman. Early on in the pull, I'm mostly just chaining things like shield wall. You want to try to keep a charge of shield wall on cooldown. The reason for this is because as you spend rage, you're going to get cooldown reduction. And if you're sitting on charges of shield wall, you're not going to benefit from that. Running immovable object as well is going to give me access to avatar whenever I do pop shield wall. So you can kind of use avatar or shield wall as an offensive cooldown almost. Once Suleiman goes down, what I did is I chained in these casters. We're just making sure that we're landing a couple of kicks, and we're going to let Chainmail patrol pretty much into us. Now, the lunging strike, we do need to handle better than we did in this run. When you're running a full melee composition, Chainmail can be pretty problematic, because during her lunging strike cast, you need to spread out, and you need to spread it in such a way where you're not going to cleave any of your other melee. That's pretty easy to do when you're in a static position, but as you start to chain in more mobs and more casters and sharpshooters and you have roots on the ground, this pull becomes pretty lethal. Going forward, we're probably going to have more, I guess, strategized ways that we're going to spread out, where we're going to assign people specific directions to move in at all times when you're playing with 4 melee. Now, if a tank gets hit, it's really not going to be the end of the world. So you could have 1 melee stay in melee and 2 melee who can attack from range move out. So for example, I think our Ret and our Feral Druid should be able to run out pretty easily, and our DK can just stay in melee beating these mobs up. We had a couple of lunging strike cleaves, so we waited to chain. Unfortunately, this is going to backfire a little bit because these mobs are now going to be extremely healthy after Chainmail dies, and then we're only doing basically 3 targets. Now, the DK is really nice in this dungeon because you're able to grip up these sharpshooters pretty easily. In previous runs, when you're playing Brewmaster, it's really difficult to get these mobs stacked up when you're not playing with the DK, so I really liked having that in here. For the next little bit of the run, Warrior's not going to be taking a lot of damage here, so it's really just making sure we're keeping things grouped, making sure we're stopping any kind of kicks, and preventing things like defend. So this is a little bit of a time sink. This is one of our probably biggest time losses of the dungeon, besides the one death that we had earlier on. Getting this pull in late was probably the next biggest time loss. Our big priority here is trying to get the caster and the sharpshooter down because the footman we can always run with, which is what we're going to do right here. So I'm going to heroic leap up the right hand or the north side staircase. We're going to pull the footman and we're going to grab the patrol of sharpshooters. Now, unfortunately, a little bit of healing from our shaman made him get threat there. So I'm trying to group everything up. And then our shaman is going to run around the corner and pull the sharpshooters and lynxes that are kind of beneath us and get everything kind of grouped up here. Now we have pretty big CDs that are available from our DK. Our Rep Paladin's always pumping, and our Feral Druid's going to have CDs in about 20 seconds. Now we're going to be trying to prevent as many flame strikes as possible because we want to keep this area clear. We have traps that are on the ground. Luckily, Freedom is very powerful here. Our Rep Paladin can Freedom himself or another player who can then run over the traps to clear them to make sure we're not taking any additional damage. What's really nice about the Lynxes is their leaps don't do a ton of damage when you're playing with a lot of plate classes like this. The only person who's in danger is the Feral Druid. So as long as we are staying healthy, the Lynx's bleeds don't really do anything because if you're at full health or if you get healed to full health, the bleed is actually removed completely. So that's why we end up pulling a lot of Lynxes in this route. Now I am setting on Shield Wall a little bit here. I should be using it. I am also rage capping, which is also a problem. 2 things you don't really want to do too much as a warrior. So unfortunately, I am bad and I missed this leap. You're normally able to just jump up. So what I do is I just move away and I just mount up. I'm then going to heroic leap over on top of this little lantern here. And I'm going to taunt these conjurers. Now, unfortunately, I'm kind of dumb. And I forgot that because we pulled the first couple of footmen at the very start of the dungeon, we actually didn't need this pack. So this pull ends up getting a little bit more dangerous than it should have been. But that's a-okay. Now, I wish I pulled 1 extra mob, because if I did that, we would have been able to skip pulls at the end of the dungeon, which would have actually gave us more time at the end of the run to just have, whether it's for score, or whether for like kind of peace of mind. Now, in this corner, we're trying to stop the flame strikes because we don't want to be forced out of this corner. Of course, pot shots are dangerous if they overlap on the same target. And we're just locking down conjures. We're just making sure we're kicking. I have access to things like Challenging Roar, or Disrupting Roar, I should say, which will actually kick mobs if I utilize it to stop cast, which I did right there. I stopped a fireball with it. Ideally, if you pull more mobs, you can stop more cast with it. And now, probably the most dangerous pack in the entire dungeon is going to be this pack right here. At least I should say until like the end of the dungeon. The big thing you're looking out for is the Knight. You want to try to lock down the casts. There's 1 caster in this pull. It's the Priest casting Holy Smite. As long as you're making sure you're locking this down, it should be okay. Pot shots are going off. It's really the Disrupting Shout overlap that's really dangerous. It's not only going to interrupt spell casting, so our healer needs to make sure he's not casting during the time that finishes, but if it overlaps with a pot shot or a Holy Smite, it could spell disaster for our group. We grip in the sharpshooter to make sure it's all nice and stacked. Again, DK is very, very strong in here. It's actually strong in every dungeon. Who am I kidding? And we're just trying to finish off this pack. As the casters and the sharpshooters start to go down, though, the Knight becomes less and less dangerous. The bleed is problematic, but again, we have a lot of plate classes. We have classes that are fairly tanky against a lot of this physical damage, so we end up being pretty okay here. So now we're doing a fairly standard pull. I'm trying to get in combat as quick as possible because we have some people running Eye of Kazan. And then I'm grabbing these 4, I guess, 2 footmen plus the other 2 footmen. And we're going to be going into Amia. Now you have to be a little careful on pull here. I'm going to pop Shield Wall. These Neophytes all mailing you at the same time can also spell disaster for you as the tank. I've learned that the hard way playing Brewmaster. Prot Warrior is going to be a little bit more stable here from Ignore Pain to block to high armor. So I'm not as scared in this pull as I would be on a Brewmaster Monk. But yeah, this is just a nice big pull. You're going to get a lot of funnel for your DK, who's going to really pop off here. And the idea is just we want to beat the third shield cast on Amia. Defends, we're going to have a CC order for. We're going to blind first, we're going to shockwave second, and then we can knock up the third cast. And we are, or I guess fourth cast technically, and we're good. Now, footmen, remember that they only cast or defend once they hit 50% health. So if you push them all to 50% at like the same time, you can then get a big stop. And then after that, it's about a 20-second, 30-second internal cooldown. So you just want to make sure you have CC that will cycle back up. I'll always have Shockwave for most of the casts, so we should be okay there. Now, one thing you'll notice is I pulled Amia off to the side, kind of near this tree. This is to control Dual Maul's padding. So he'll path, actually, in the most direct path to Amia. If you tank her where you pulled her from, he'll kind of run down the middle of the path. But if you tank her off to the side like this, he's actually going to go around in the grassy area. And since we're going to be skipping him, that is preferred. Now, we want to be at 42%. Unfortunately, we're at 44. I did pull a little bit extra, so we did waste some time doing that, but that's A-okay. And now we are ready to go into boss. Now, up to this point, I have not tanked anything higher than a 15 Priory on my Prot Warrior. So I was pretty nervous for this fight because I know how much this bleed hurts other tanks. Now, luckily, Shamans have high throughput. I'm also going to become tankier as I lose health, and our Shaman's going to have higher throughput on me as I lose health. So this is actually a pretty good composition. We also have things like the Feral Druid's Nature's Vigil, and we also have Hand of Sacrifice on a 1-minute cooldown on our Ret Paladin. So while I'm not running with a healer who has an external, I have a tanky DPS who has an external, and Shield Wall, Ring Ritual Mud, Scrap Field, Last Stand are all going to be quite powerful in this encounter. So I'm going to start off with my trinkets, and the trinket's also going to get cooldown reduction, which is pretty nice as well. So I'm going to be able to use it more often than the 2-minute mark that is kind of implied from the trinket. So starting off, remember, Avatar is also giving us Shield Wall. Shield Wall is also giving us Avatar. So there's this nice kind of back and forth. As we take damage in this fight too, we're also going to proc Shield Wall. Basically, the name of the game is I'm going to spend most of my rage economy on Ignore Pain. So I'm going to try to really help my healer out, but it is on my healer to kind of pull me out of those pits. Now, luckily, things like Battle Scarred Veteran it's going to do a little bit of heavy lifting here. My Scrap Field is going to do a little bit of heavy lifting on this fight as well. Trinkets, really, though, are what's going to keep us nice and healthy. Now, this fight's really weird because while it requires a lot of cooldowns and a lot of healing, the next couple pulls are also going to require a lot of, defensives and healing. So I need to kind of start banking when the boss is low. So constantly throughout this fight, I'm in my head, like, playing it out like, okay, I can use this cooldown here and it should be back up at the end of the fight. But I'm not trying to get it up for the end of the fight. I'm trying to get it up for the next pull. So I'm only going to get so many uses of my trinkets. Ring Ritual Mud, I'm basically going to send it on cooldown, so I should be able to get 3 uses out of the fight. Over the course of the entire encounter, it's going to be roughly, I don't know, like a minute cooldown, so I can probably get 3 uses out of it. And then I want it up for the next pull. Things like Shield Wall, I'm going to try to use on cooldown, but only when I need to. I'm calling for Hand of Sacrifice, basically on the minute. So on the next Pierce Armor, I'm going to be calling for Hand of Sacrifice again. We had one used earlier, and then one being used now. This should help me throughout most of the rest of the fights. I could use Spell Block here. I don't know if I can actually spell... I'll be honest, I don't know how many things I can Spell Block in this dungeon. I ended up running it. Looking back, I wish I ran Bolster instead. But Spell Block seemed to be probably the best thing to use in the next trash area. So Spell Block is going to come into use there. It's not so great at the start of this dungeon because I'm not tanking that many casters. I'm trying to sit on my last couple of cooldowns. I got actually a Shield Wall proc. I want a Shield Wall going into the next pull, which I have 1 charge of. I'm actually going to have 2 now. I have Avatar ready, and I have Ring Ritual Mud. So I should be good. Now, unfortunately, my mouse did not register my Avatar when I used it here on pull, so I actually messed up this pull. So I'm going to charge in. I went to Avatar and it didn't go off, so I'm going to take a massive hit here. I actually dip really low before I even get Shield Wall active. I then panic hit a charge of Shield Wall, which I shouldn't have done, and then I hit Avatar. So while it did extend the Shield Wall to the 12 seconds instead of just the 4, the problem is that I dipped really low and the chain got offset, which means that these Sacred Tolls are going to be spread out, which is going to spell a little bit of issue for our healer, who has his cooldowns kind of like scheduled or like planned out. So it's kind of nice because it gives us a little bit more time to top people up, but it means that the cooldowns aren't going to cover all of the tools. It's going to only cover a handful of them. Now, once the pull gets rolling and I get spell block available, it's going to negate a lot of the Templars' increased holy damage that they're going to be doing to us. So I'm able to block most of those attacks. So honestly, once spell block is rolling, I'm going to be really, really, really healthy. It just faded now, but I now have a shield wall that just faded. I have a nice fat demolish, which is going to give me a 20% DR. I still have last stand available, and we're going to be feeling really good. So at this point, I was very thankful for spell block, but I should have started with it. I should have used Avatar, made sure Avatar actually got hit right when I pulled. But now the rest of the dungeon, we're going to be kind of chilling. We're on a really good pace. Being done with that pull at the 14-minute mark is really good. We want to be on boss around the 17:30 mark, and we should be feeling really good as well. So the idea here is that we want the priest to die, and then we chain. And then once we chain, we'll have our unholy assault coming up, and we should be feeling pretty good. Again, rep paladins kind of always have CDs. They have minutes and 30 seconds. So we're going to kick the priest, and then we're going to start pulling down the stairs. I'm committing things like last stand here to make sure I get a little bit of healing. We're going to be stopping this with Shockwave, the Flame Strike, and then we're going to be trying to LOS around the pillar here. Now, you can't line of sight the Sacred Tolls, but you can line of sight the casters to force them down out of that consecration without having to get kicks. Now, unfortunately, our Feral Druid moved a little bit too far, and he line of sight our Shaman, which couldn't land a heal, which meant that he died. Now, we deploy a Battle Res immediately because the release is still at the start of the dungeon, which is way too far of a run back. Basically, until we kill this next boss, we cannot afford to have deaths. So making sure people are topped and using defensives for their Sacred Tolls. And we generally want to chain right after a Sacred Toll goes out. But unfortunately, like the Sacred Toll timings here are just like kind of awkward. So right now here, I'm waiting for those to go off as they get really, really low. So this is kind of an awkward point. I don't know if losing a DPS is what caused this to happen, but we're just waiting to chain basically. Right when we chain, we're going to make sure that we're getting a couple of kicks. The skull marker, actually, if you notice this, is being put down by our DK. And the reason he's putting that down is because it lets me know where Defile is. Because I can't see Defile, I want to make sure I'm keeping mobs near it. And so he can stand in it and that the mobs are in it so he can get additional damage out. If you're playing with the DK or playing with any class that has ground effects that sometimes you maybe can't see, using that strategy is really nice. Playing with casters that are putting down like things like Frozen Orb or Flame Strikes or whatever it might be, it's kind of nice as a tank to know where I need to stand. Now at this point we are chilling, so I'm putting down world markers. The world markers are for reference points in the room. So I can call out, we're moving triangle, we're moving purple, we're moving X, bait on purple, move to X, bait on triangle, move to blue. Things like that will help us when it comes to baiting the hammers of purity in this next fight. Now, luckily, we're playing with a pretty OP comp. We have things like bubble and AMS at our disposal. So these pyres are actually going to be very, very easy to deal with. Prot Warrior doesn't do the greatest job at handling soaking a lot of pyres at the same time. Things like Brewmaster generally can. I don't know how the other tanks really fare. I know, Prot Paladin's obviously very good. But I'm only going to like to soak no more than 2 stacks if I can help it. And I'm going to use a lot of defensives to do so. So right here, we're baiting the Castigator shields. And then once those go off, our Shaman has a little bit of time to heal us. And then our DK is going to triple soak with AMS. The rotation we have, or that DKs can do, is they can do every other set, and they generally, without, getting catered to with things like Pain Sup or something like that, can generally soak 3 at this difficulty. So he's going to soak 3 pretty much every time, and then our Paladin is saving his bubble for the 5, which is going to be right here. So it's kind of far across the room. We're going to wait to bait Castigator shields where we're at. Once we do that, we're going to move towards the pyre. Once we're healthy, he's going to pop bubble, horse, and he's just going to go into all 5 of the soaks here, making sure that we're healthy. It's kind of on our DPS who's soaking to make sure that the group is healthy and they're not overcommitting to the soak. Because if worst case scenario, you lose a DPS on that. If they can't soak all 5, you can always have the tank step in. Our general strategy is we always move like clockwise around the room. Now this is a 3-set. Our DK has his AMS up. We're going to bait Castigator Shields a little bit away from it, and then we're going to move back towards that pyre, making sure that we're not getting clipped by hammers in the process. So we got our soaks there, we're getting the kick, and then we're moving back to the marker. Now later in the encounter, and this is something that we're talking about on the fly, is baiting the Hammers of Purity away from the boss so we're able to continue hitting him while he's casting Pyre, because that's kind of a big problem point or a pain point with melee comps like this. So we're moving out into the corner and then moving him back towards the markers. Now later in the fight we don't do this all that well. What ends up happening with this spell queue is that, oops, I baited the Cascade Shield wrong there, is that he casts the Purity and then he immediately goes into a Pyre cast. And as a triple melee group, you're going to lose a lot of damage there. So baiting the hammers away from him during the cast is going to be really good this deep into the fight. Now, again, we should be moving away right when the cast starts, but our melee DPS don't do that. They continue DPSing and it ends up not working all that well. Something that we might try to implement in like a future run. So I'm going to be able to soak 1 here because I don't have a lot of defensives. I don't have shield wall. I don't have trinket. I don't know if you can spell block it. If you can, let me know down below. I don't know if I ever actually ended up trying to do that. Once my debuff drops, though, I'm going to soak another one. Luckily, our Rep Paladin stepped in and soaked with Shield of Vengeance. While it does require a little bit of healing from our healer to keep that DPS alive, Paladins are pretty tanky. Another good option is just having DK soak just natty, and they can always Death Strike. They do lose a little bit of damage, but that's generally a-okay. So trying to bait against the wall is what we should be doing, but again, our DPS just stayed in melee. But now they can't do damage, so that's kind of the trade-off, is if you don't bait away, you then can't hit the guy at all. Now here we're going to have our DK is going to soak 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. He's chilling, and then I'm going to soak 1, 2, and then I'm going to pop a Ringing Mud Ritual, as well as just additional CDs like Demolish and Ignore Pain. And that's it. That's Brawn Pike. He goes down. We are now sitting at 20 minutes and 30 seconds. We're actually looking really good. Our last 18 that we did, we were 2 seconds over the timer, but we're 1 minute and 27 seconds faster than our last run. So we're looking pretty good. Now, when I say last run, it's comparing a run that I did on my Brewmaster, so I am running a different comp, so I'm still kind of sweating. We're gonna pull the next area pretty conservatively, but it's gonna pay off. So we're doing this pack by itself. I'm saving my challenging or disrupting shout for the double greater heal cast. I was able to get both of the kicks, and that allows it actually a nice long 4-second lockout. So I'm able to move them up the stairs a little bit, and then they should die before they start casting again. Now the Sacred Tolls in this pull are really dangerous, so it's really hard to get this pack into the next pull because the next pull is also double Paladin. Once this pack goes down there, we're going to be doing a couple of doubles. So the way that this kind of melee comp works in this next room is you can't really pull all that big, but we're going to just do a bunch of chains to make the pulls still sizable. So first we have a double Paladin with a Footman, and then we have a Mage and Priest off to the right. Now I'm going to get the first kick on the Mage because the Priest doesn't cast right away, and then we're going to kind of hold them up against the side of this wall here. We have one player assigned to always kicking the Firebolt volley, and that's going to be a range kick. So in this case, we're going to just assign it to our DK. Now, you could have the Shaman range kick, but the Shamans gain a massive DR for whatever school that they're kicking. So our since like the Purification Beam is holy damage, our Shaman wants to be kicking the Holy Smite because that's holy. So if that makes sense. So you really just want your melee DPS kicking the fireballs, and you want your Shaman in this case to kick the Priest whenever they can. Now Link gets committed, some big CDs. This is probably the most dangerous pull in this area because it's double Paladin plus a light spawn. We're never going to see that combination again. We might see like double light spawn. We might see 1 Paladin, 1 light spawn, but never a double Paladin. Tolls are coming out. We want to just make sure everyone's healthy. And before I chain, I want to just make sure that these Paladins are nice and low. I could go into a light spawn pull next, but we end up kind of taking it nice and slow because there's no reason to really rush it. Once the Paladin goes down, I'm going to be then heading out to chain into this kind of corner pack here. This also allows our Paladin to reset our buff if we need to. There is a buff in the dungeon that Paladins and Priests can use. It's this little golden orb that you see up against this like pillar. If they click that, you gain a little bit of extra holy damage. It's much better for like the tank than it is for the DPS, at least in percentage of overall. Now this pack is pretty tame. Unfortunately, our DK did send cooldowns here, but there's nothing else I can really pull to make this pull like worthwhile. We want the light spawn to get pushed to 25% health, and then we can ignore him completely. I'm going to then charge into the patrol. I'm going to use Disrupting Shout once again and make sure that I'm kicking both of the casters. Now, the Footmen unfortunately got healed, but I didn't see it as really that bad, that big of a deal, because it means that they're not going to erupt right away, and we're able to kind of get situated in the pull before they die. The big things you don't want to get healed in this area are really the paladins or other light spawn. If a caster gets healed or a footman gets healed, it's kind of whatever. But if you have like a paladin get healed or another light spawn, it just delays the pull. It keeps like the lethality still present in whatever pull you're in. We have 2 DPS assigned to the volleys, and the rest of the people are kind of just kicking whatever they can. As this light spawn starts casting this purification, I know he's going to hit 25%, meaning he'll die. He'll cast his next ability, so I'm going to charge into the next pull, and we're going to make sure we're getting a kick on the greater heal. Now, if a greater heal is going off on the light spawn after he starts casting bursting light, you can let it go off. The burst of light is going to kill the mob anyways, but we wanted to get kicks to make sure that we're not chaining into any other pack. Now, this pull, unfortunately, is also not super effective. I need to figure out a better way to route up here, or I need to pull more earlier on in the dungeon so we can skip some of these packs. The light spawns aren't terrible. While they are kind of lethal due to this purification channel, they do die at 25% health. So if you're able to push them down to 25% health, you're going to be chilling. Now, unfortunately, our Feral Druid is getting absolutely bullied by this light spawn. Every time it casts the purification beam, it's targeting our Feral Druid. But that's okay, so we're able to push before he casts his next one, and we're going to now go into Brawn Pike. Now, again, I have not tanked anything higher, any priority higher than a 15 on this character yet. So I didn't know how much Brawn Pike was going to hurt. Realistically, we could have pulled an additional pack on top of this and lusted with our CDs, which would have been probably the most effective. Unfortunately, we didn't. We just kind of took him as it is. Spell block is very good for this guy. The Holy Strike is able to be blocked at that point, which makes it really good. Unfortunately, shield block dropped here, and I couldn't get enough rage to reinstate my shield block, so I ended up having to shield slam, which is a big damage loss. That's a-okay. Once the priest dies, we're going to chain into the next pull. I'm going to get a nice big fat kick on the priest, and we're going to chain it back on a Brawn Pike. This is the pull I should have done to start with, but unfortunately, it's not. But we could have lusted this, and it probably would have been fine. Brawn Pike would have died. Cooldowns would have just sent most of the trash into the dirt pretty quickly. That's something to do in a future dungeon run. And we talked about it actually towards the end of the dungeon, or actually at the end of this poll, we started talking about it because the rest of the dungeon is pretty free at this point. With 6 minutes left, we only need about 3.5, 4 for boss. So we were feeling pretty good. Once Brawn Pike goes down, we're going to just start chaining pretty aggressively here. And again, remember, Footmen, when they die, they do like an eruption of damage, of holy damage. So you don't want too many of them to die at the same time. So I find this chain is actually really effective because you're not going to have like 6 footmen dying at the same time. You're going to have 3 and 3, and you can line up your CCs a little bit better. So we're going to get like a nice, hopefully a stun here. We got a knock up on one of them to prevent. If they're in any type of CC, it'll prevent them from erupting. So things like knocks, things like stuns, blinds, anything like that is going to be super useful here. We are now going to chain into the last pack. Now, unfortunately, this is why this route wasn't super great, because as you can see here, we're going to be about 2.5% over, which is not great. It means that we wasted time doing some kind of trash. Like I said, with Lust, the last boss is like a 3:30 fight, maybe 4 minutes at the worst. So we're feeling pretty good. So as this pull dies, we'll start chaining up into boss. If we were able to skip the Paladin pull, like if we had like an extra percent from downstairs, we probably could have just pulled the Footman onto boss, because there's a way to delay her damage so it doesn't like overlap with the Footman dying. And I'll talk about that here in a second. So this last boss has a weird spell queuing thing that happens that you can force her to do less damage, which is kind of interesting. So the way that it works is that she casts an ability called Inner Fire, and Inner Fire buffs her holy damage by a tremendous amount, 50% or 100% or something like that. And so you want to force her by kicking or not kicking her to do Blinding Light before Inner Fire. So if you kick her first cast and then let the second cast go off, what it'll do is if you can see here, her Blinding Light's going to queue up before the Inner Fire. And that's what you want to see. So now you can look away, it does almost no damage, and then Inner Fire gets cast afterwards, making some of the next abilities do more damage, but it's avoidable damage. And as long as we see that Blinding Light is going off, we're going to now continuously kick to make sure she's not having those abilities on cooldown. So after this Holy Flame, it should go Blinding Light now into Inner Fire afterwards. So you kick first, let the second one go off, and then you continuously kick after the fact, and that'll make your phase 1 extremely, extremely easy. Unfortunately, this is kind of like a weird movement that I had here. Also, one other thing, as a prot warrior, you can definitely sit in battle stance. I was sitting in defensive stance for the first phase here, which I should have been in battle stance for anyways, but it's all good. So Blinding Light, we're going to look away, then we're going to look back, and then Inner Fire gets cast. So that's how you do it in phase 1. In phase 2, I actually don't know how it works. I think there's a way to do it, but I'm still like, I haven't figured it out yet, or if it has ever happened, it's happened by accident. Maybe they've fixed it, because I thought Blizzard actually tried to fix it. Because it used to be where you don't kick the first cast, then you kick afterwards, but now it's like the other way around. So she's going to jump up now at 50%. I'm going to actually be able to land a Heroic Leap here, which saves me a little bit of time. I wish I was a little bit quicker at it, but as a Brewmaster main, I'm not used to doing the Heroic Leap there. But we're now on Little Miss Merprey. Now, ideally, you push her before she gets a second ad spawn. Unfortunately, we pushed her right as the ad set spawned. You'll see them kind of coming up. You'll see like losing threat in the distance. So we do have them coming. So right now I'm trying to just pull her away. I believe you would actually, I believe in phase 2, I don't know if you can. I think her Inner Fire just happened so much earlier than anything else. So maybe they did actually fix it and they just changed her spell queuing. But yeah, a couple of shockwaves, a couple of knockbacks there, was able to keep those mobs at bay. Those mobs do not have a threat table, so they will melee anyone, and pretty much anyone but the tank. I think if they do target the tank for some reason, it won't actually hurt you because it's just a melee attack, but they do a lot of damage to your melee DPS, so you want to be super, super careful. Now, this fight doesn't get any harder. I actually find that this area of the sanctum of the boss room is actually easier to play in than downstairs. Downstairs is kind of harder to see the stuff on the ground. You have less room to play in. There's more like awkward walls. But in phase 2, you have more room to play with. I like this rectangular shape. Your camera doesn't get clipped anywhere. I generally like it up here. So I feel like this is one of those dungeons which is very anticlimactic. By the time you get to the end of the fight, it's really just like, do you have enough time on the clock to kill her? If yes, then you're vibing. With 2 deaths, we would have had an extra 30 seconds, plus whatever time it was spent running back. I think on our first death, Mouth ended up running back to the group from the start of the dungeon. On our second death, we ended up sending the battle res, but it's like totally fine. But, you know, we probably could have had an extra 40 seconds on the dungeon. I could have also pulled more aggressively in this area. So yeah, lots of things to improve on. Again, I'm not like a protection warrior savant. I like the class. I'm pretty okay at it, but there's a lot of things I need to improve on. So, but that's the run. So I hope you guys learned something. Of course, if you have any feedback for me, leave it down below. I'm trying to get better at this class and at tanking in general. So any feedback is welcomed. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the commentary, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.